Hello and welcome to this short conversation on grief. And really, what my goal is in this video is to create a lot of clarity for you. I want to pack this video with clarity in regards to answering one question. And it's a question that I hope you'll really consider. And that question is, what is a healthy outcome when it comes to grief and loss? When we think about mental health outcomes or coaching outcomes for people, we have things called good outcomes. And that's what professionals call it. But it's really important for you to be thinking, what is a good outcome for me on the other side of this? There's a psychologist by the name of Jeffrey Zeig who says that grief is like an arrow. Imagine I have a bow and arrow. Grief is like an arrow without a target, right? Where if you think about anxiety, the target could be calm. Sadness, the target could be happiness. Grief is an arrow without a target. We don't really intuitively understand what the target is. And I'm going to put as much clarity as I can into this so that by the end of the video, you will be clear on what a healthy outcome is in your grieving process and what is a way for you to actually begin moving from where you're starting today towards that outcome. What will fill in the gap for you to get there? My name, by the way, is Peter Schwartz. I've worked with clients in a variety of grieving contexts. My first introduction to grief was professionally, was when I was working at inpatient mental health. So my clients at that time, when they needed help with grief, were there because their grief groups, their support groups, their grief therapy, those things weren't working for them. And it was affecting their lives so badly that they had to go to an inpatient. And the processes that move somebody from the most challenging circumstances in grief to a healthy outcome are just as effective, regardless of what our grieving process is like. So the things I'm going to share with you worked in the toughest environments and help move people towards a good outcome. These things will work for you. They will help you, and they will help you get a better outcome than most people even know is possible. So, so let's think about, is this video right for you? Should you continue watching this video? Well, the people who come to this type of work or find this type of work useful fall into a couple of categories. There's the obvious, the grief is more immediate category. The loss was immediate. And so people in this space are experiencing they're in need of what I would call emotional first aid, right? So the loss is really immediate and it's the overwhelm of all of the things that come with that. If that's you, definitely keep watching. But also, we get a lot of people who it's been years since their initial loss. And typically, what you'll see is that they fall into a couple of categories here. Number one, at best, the best case that you'll see is a resigned sadness or acceptance of a new normal that really isn't as good of an outcome as it could be. These people are maybe surviving, functioning, but life has definitely lost a certain amount of flavor to it. They haven't gotten back the vitality, the joy, the meaning, the richness of life. There's like a resigned, but there's an acceptance of it, and they're moving through life day to day. We get that a lot. If that's you, keep watching. And then we also have people where they're still experiencing bouts of grief. So around holidays, anniversaries, the emotions of grief are still more present for them. And the emotions that came in response to the grief, the guilt, the anger, the fight or flight, the insecurities, the worry, the uncertainties, there's some aftershocks that unfortunately haven't dampened, but instead have now become regular experiences in their nervous system. So if you fall into any one of those kind of categories, keep watching. This is definitely for you. So the core philosophy behind the way that we work with grief in this style of working with people hinges around this fact that when we lose someone, we don't just lose them on the outside, we lose them on the inside as well. So when we have someone who's important to us in our life, that person becomes woven into the fabric of our being, right? So, if you think about the people that we love, they're part of us. They are part of us. They're part of our lives. Sorry, ignore the fireworks. That's Zoom. I apologize for that. You're going to occasionally see some, if I do certain things, then Zoom will have reactions. I'm not sure how to turn that off at the moment. But people become part of us, they become part of our lives. And we also build a vision of the future with them. So they become literally woven into the fabric of us and our reality. So much so, by the way, so much so that if we do a brain scan, you can see when people think of the self, when if you think about yourself, there are certain areas of your brain that will light up. And if you look, and then if I have you think of someone that you're close to, the areas of your brain that light up are closer to the areas of the self, meaning we really do perceive the people we love as extensions of ourself. They become Lego pieces where we're connected together. So when we experience a loss on the outside, that's horrific enough. That's terrible enough. But then what happens internally is we lose connection to them on the inside as well. And this loss of the internal connection is what accounts for the variety of things that we see in terms of the way people respond to grief. The extreme emotional overwhelm, the dissociation, the shock, the reason why when people even get past the initial emotional challenges, why life may not return or be as vibrant or rich as it can be, has to do with this disconnection from them internally. And in reality, we're not just disconnecting from them internally, we're disconnecting from parts of ourselves. So I first learned this when I had a client in inpatient. So, and the other thing I need to tell you is that after having done this work for as long as I have, you're not crazy. You're not broken. Uh, Disconnecting to somebody that you love that much internally, and then also in doing that, disconnecting from the parts of ourselves that are woven together with them is crazy making. Okay. So you're not broken, you're not crazy. And there's a way in which we get to repair our relationship to them on the inside and reclaim our connection to them on the inside in a way that isn't painful, in a way that's pleasant, enjoyable, loving. So think about there's a dilemma that we fall into with grief where to think about our lost person causes us pain. So that's part one of the dilemma. Part two of the dilemma is if I don't think about that person, I'm disconnecting from them, and that causes us pain. And then we go into all the emotions that we have in response to this dilemma. We go into fight, flight, anger. We go into dissociation. We collapse. We have low energy. We have all these things. So what we want to do is we want to transcend this dilemma. And there's a way in which you can do that where you transcend that and change your relationship with this person that you lost and regain the relationship internally. And what we found happens for people at every uh, in the different varieties in which people experience grief and loss, either after a recent loss or after years, transforming that relationship radically improves their emotional experience, their emotional life, their attitudes, their thoughts, their behaviors, their ability to live in the different stages of life. And that's the invitation. I mean, that's really the invitation here. So the the workshop that we're doing is not of information about this. There's a lot of information out there. Um, it's a guided transformational process of changing that relationship into one of felt internal connection and presence. So if you think about, there are people in your life currently who, when you think about them, you can feel a connection, you can feel a presence with them, right? So if I think about, I'm going to be visiting my father in about 2 weeks. So he's not in the room with me, but I have a connection to him and I can think about him and I can feel his presence. I have that experience of felt presence, right? I have a dog. And when I'm working, sometimes the dog will be in the room with me. And I may not even be looking at him or paying attention, but I have that felt presence. The dog is here, he's with me. And the core outcome of this workshop that we're going to be doing together, should you choose to do it, is helping you translate your loss experience into one of felt presence and connection. And that will resolve that dilemma. That will create immediate emotional relief for you, whether you're in acute loss or whether you're in the different stages of loss. It's by reclaiming this felt presence that we get back access inside of ourselves to the person that we lost and to the parts of ourselves that were woven into that relationship. Now, I'm not suggesting to you that this is better than having the person in real life, right? That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting to you is, so for example, when I first learned this, I was working with a client at Inpatient who had been in grief therapy for 5 years. She had been sent to us because she had almost OD'd on pills and alcohol, and because of her grief, and nothing was working. She had $1 million business that she was not in charge of anymore. Her current children were suffering because of her grief, and she needed help. And so I went in doing a lot of research. What I did is I started looking for not what are the current theories of grief, not what are the models of grief. That's not what I was interested in. I was interested in what are the best outcomes for people in a grieving process. And I found a man who was studying the same thing. He did a research project where he went and interviewed people who had had grief and loss, really traumatic grief and loss, but had really good outcomes from grief and loss. And what he found was that these people who had the better outcomes, they had transformed their relationship to an internal relationship with the person they lost. They didn't get over the person they lost. They didn't move on from the person they lost. They didn't do that. What they did is they said, no, I'm going to transform this relationship and bring it internal, and I'm going to carry them with me forward. But this is very different than thinking about the person and experiencing the pain of loss. That's a very different thing than what we're talking about here. We're talking about transforming that into a felt present moment connection with the person and then continuing that bond forward in your life. And so I did this after learning about this. I did this on a traumatic, I'm smiling because I'll explain why I'm smiling. My cousin Will, shout out Will, love you, buddy. Um, my cousin Will had a drug problem and he went to a rehab and he OD'd. when he left the rehab, which unfortunately is extremely common for addicts. So they go to rehab, they're taken away from their triggers, and their tolerance reduces. Their tolerance to the drug reduces, and then they go back out into the world where their triggers to use are. They have a lowered tolerance, they use, and oftentimes they OD, which is unfortunately a very sad, sad thing. And so Will's my cousin. He's my homeboy. He's my homeboy. And why am I smiling when I talk about Will? Because I transformed Will into a felt presence and connection. So when I think of Will, I have the experience of his presence. Will is with me. Will is with me. Now, am I denying the fact that he's gone? No, I know he's gone. But I have the choice to carry him with me and to feel his presence with me and to experience him in this way. And I don't expect that to make sense for you. This is a new paradigm in grieving. This is very much grieving differently. But when you can do this with your loss experience and bring them into the place of felt presence and connection, you will create really good, healthy outcomes in your life. Now, I took this experience and I brought it to my clients in inpatient. And I was working with a client who had lost a child. I would get a lot of clients, actually. This was very common, was we'd get clients who had lost their children. And one by one, see, I'm smiling. I can feel a smile forming. How could you smile at something so horrific? And it's not. I'm not smiling at the tragedy. Please understand me. I'm not. I'm smiling at the look on my clients' faces, the parents' faces, the wife's faces, the husband's faces, when they change that relationship and reorganize it into an internal relationship of felt presence. And the reconnection with this person. Okay. Again, would they rather have had them in 3D reality? Yes, of course. Of course. But we don't just lose people on the outside in grief, we lose them on the inside. And if you reclaim that connection and presence with the process I would love to share with you in this workshop, it will be one of the most rewarding, fulfilling, enriching things that you can do for your life. So that's one piece of how do you create a healthy outcome in grief and loss. That's one piece of it. There is more that we're not going to have time to go into in the workshop because I'll tell you what those other pieces are. And I'll explain why I can't go into those in the workshop. This felt presence, this is the core though. This is the 20% that gets 80% of results for a healthy outcome. The other thing that happens in grief and loss is our vision for the future changes. Sorry, I apologize again for these emoji things. Our vision for the future changes. So, for example, I have a client currently in the program who she had a shared vision with her husband about the vacations they were going to take, the investments they were going to do. There's a line from the Bible, a quote from the Bible, that without a vision, the people perish. Like one way we have a healthy identity is by having a vision. One of the core features of depression is not having a vision to look forward to. So another healthy outcome for people on the other side of a grief and loss experience is creating a vision for your life. And then learning to live into that vision. And that vision includes, by the way, so let's say, for example, you know, my cousin Will, let's say that we have habits and routines that fulfilled certain needs in my life. Like if I talk to him at the end of a hard day. So there's two ways that we can address that. We can address that by internalizing this relationship and I get to continue to talk to him. I get to, hey, man, today was tough. I get to have this continuing relationship with him. And or we think about what are ways in my life currently as I continue to bring Will forward with me into my life where I can also talk to people who can help me when I've had a hard day, right? So a good grief outcome is again the core of this work, but it's also it creating a vision for your future, for how you're going to be as a person, expanding. We're challenged in grief and loss to redefine ourselves. And so when it comes to the full picture of what a healthy outcome is, it's that internal relationship, that's the core. It's creating a vision for your future and redefining the self and then beginning to live into that. Now, that is a process that can take months, can take years. But what gets people stuck on the way, or what's stuck, I don't like that language. What stops people from moving towards that is number one, not having clarity that that outcome exists. Hopefully, you have that clarity now. You understand a good grief and loss outcome is transforming that relationship into an internal felt relationship. You understand it's re-envisioning a future, it's redefining yourself, and then having a clear process to begin living into that life. Okay. And my invitation for you is to come do the core of this work with us on the workshop. My promise to you is that you will have the emotional relief, the emotional progress, the emotional improvement that I had with my cousin Will, that I guide my clients through at the inpatient of that felt presence and connection. Okay. And for some of you, then looking forward about how do I want to do my future? How do I redefine myself? If there comes a time when you want to have that conversation, we can offer a conversation at that time. But first, start here, start with the core of this work, and it would be a privilege. It would be a privilege. I would honestly be privileged to share this with you. I hope to see you on the workshop.